All right, let's kick off another deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at the story of Isaac and Rebekah.
Okay.
We're going to be using this YouTube video analysis, and it turns out it's much more than just a love story.
Yeah.
This video dives into like all the history and the culture,
Right.
and it just completely changes how you see this classic story.
Yeah, I was really impressed by how the video like puts it all in context.
Yeah, it's like we're traveling back in time.
Mm.
So the video starts out by setting the stage. Abraham, he's old, he's been blessed, and he wants to find a wife for his son Isaac.
Right.
But he has one very specific requirement.
Okay.
No Canaanite women.
Uh-huh.
Why was that such a big deal?
Well, for Abraham, it was all about lineage,
Mm.
like keeping his family line pure.
Okay.
But it was also about religious purity, marrying within the same faith. That was really important for their identity
I see.
and also to keep their covenant with God, their agreement.
Right, that promise passed down through generations.
Exactly. It was a huge deal for Abraham and his descendants.
So it's not just about finding any wife for Isaac. It's got to be someone who shares their beliefs and their heritage.
Right.
And that's where Abraham's servant comes in. This really trusted servant, he's sent on this big mission back to Abraham's homeland.
Yeah.
To find the perfect bride.
Couldn't find her. Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting. The servant doesn't just, leave it to chance encounters.
Yeah.
He actually prays for a sign from God.
Wow.
And this sign is going to reveal the chosen woman.
Okay, so what's the sign?
Her willingness to water his 10 camels.
10 camels.
10 camels. Can you imagine that? That is a lot of thirsty animals.
It's like, can you grab me a coffee? Oh, and my 20 friends are coming too. They're really thirsty.
Right.
Yeah.
And then who walks by? Rebekah.
It's like a movie.
And not only is she beautiful, but she also has all those qualities that Abraham was looking for. She's hardworking, she's compassionate,
The video really emphasizes that it's not just about looks.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about those inner virtues,
Mm-hmm.
The things that Abraham really valued.
So the servant is definitely impressed,
Yeah.
but he's not jumping to conclusions, right?
Sure. He's careful.
He wants to make sure that this is actually God's will.
He's like, okay, God, is this her?
Right. And so what does he do? He goes to Rebekah's family. He explains his whole mission.
Yeah.
And their reaction is kind of wild, at least to us today.
Well, they don't want her to go.
No, it's the opposite. They're like, yep, this is totally God's will.
Wow.
Which, says a lot about their beliefs and how patriarchal their society was. They didn't even question it. It makes you wonder, though, about Rebekah, right? Like, did she have any say in this?
Oh, that's a great point. And the video actually goes into that.
Really?
Yeah, it talks about how much agency Rebekah had,
Yeah.
Considering it was a patriarchal society. On the one hand, the men make the decision,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's this powerful moment. They ask her, do you want to go?
Yeah.
And she just says, I will go.
3 little words that speak volumes. Some people might see it as, just obedience. But I think there's also a sense of determination there. Like she's embracing the unknown. She has faith, but also maybe a strong sense of self.
The video actually suggests that Rebekah exercised a powerful form of agency within, the limits of her culture. She was choosing to trust God's plan, even though it meant leaving everything behind.
So it wasn't just obedience, it was a deliberate act of faith.
Exactly.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about faith and free will. What would you have done if you were her?
I don't know.
It's a question that goes beyond time and culture. We all face choices, like, do you stick with what's familiar or do you take a risk and go for the unknown?
That's so true.
So we've got Abraham trying to keep his legacy going. We've got the servant trying to follow God's will. And we've got Rebekah stepping out in faith.
Yeah.
But there's one person whose point of view we haven't talked about yet.
Who's that?
Isaac. The video points out that, surprisingly, the Bible doesn't really tell us what Isaac's feeling during all of this.
Really?
It's like a puzzle missing a piece. We know about Abraham, the servant, and Rebekah, but Isaac, we don't know.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder what he was thinking. Like, was he nervous about this whole arranged marriage thing?
Yeah.
Or excited? Or maybe just like, whatever, Dad.
Right. The video makes us really think about his side of the story. And speaking of the story, did you notice how the servant, he wanted to get Rebekah back to Isaac as soon as possible? He wouldn't even let her stay with her family for a few more days.
Oh, yeah, the video talks about that. Like, he was in a hurry.
It makes sense. Abraham was old. He probably wanted to see his son married before, well, you know.
He wanted to see him settled, yeah.
So it was partly out of loyalty to Abraham to fulfill that promise, but the video also mentioned another reason, right?
Yeah, the servant, he felt like it was God's will. Like he had to get Rebekah back to Isaac quickly.
So he was being loyal to Abraham and obedient to God.
Exactly. It's really interesting how those two things kind of came together.
Okay, but going back to Rebekah for a sec, I keep thinking about that moment when her family asks if she'll go. I will go. Just wow.
Such a powerful statement. She was willing to leave everything she knew her whole life to trust in God.
It must have been terrifying, but also exciting. And think about the journey itself. 10 camels loaded with gifts.
Wow.
That's a huge caravan.
It's easy to forget how tough that journey would have been. You know?
Totally.
The desert, bandits, who knows what they could have run into.
It's like an ancient adventure.
Right.
And then there's this scene where Isaac is out in a field just meditating.
Yeah.
And he sees the camels coming. It's like the moment he's been waiting for.
It is. And what does Rebekah do? She sees him and immediately covers herself with a veil.
It's a powerful reminder that things were so different back then.
Absolutely. Modesty was really important. You know, the veil, it says a lot about the roles of men and women back then.
It's a whole different culture. So thinking about all of this, what does it mean for us today? I mean, we've learned so much in this deep dive.
It's more than just a story, right?
Yeah, it's about faith. It's about family. It's about having the courage to go after what you believe in.
It makes us think about the choices we make. How free are we, really? How much do societal pressures affect us? And how do we balance tradition with being true to ourselves?
It's amazing the questions this story brings up. Like, we've talked about Abraham the servant, Rebekah, but what about Isaac?
Yeah, the video keeps coming back to that.
Why is he so silent in the story?
The video doesn't actually answer that.
Does it give any hints?
I think it's more like it wants us to think about it ourselves, to fill in the blanks.
So instead of seeing it as like, something's missing, we can see it as an opportunity to use our imagination.
Exactly. And that's what I love about exploring these old stories. They don't just tell us what happened. They make us think.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. Like, it's a mirror reflecting back our own values and beliefs.
And sometimes what we see can be really surprising.
You know, something the video mentioned that really got me thinking was the part where Isaac brings Rebekah into his mother Sarah's tent.
Oh, right. It seems like such a small detail, but the video really dives into its symbolism.
Yeah, like what does it actually mean?
Remember, back then, a tent was more than just a place to live.
Okay.
It represented Sarah, like her whole legacy as the mother of the family.
So by taking Rebekah there, Isaac was saying, you're part of the family now.
Exactly. It's about lineage and inheritance, which were really important in that culture. And it also shows how important women were for keeping the family going.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. It's incredible how these tiny details can tell you so much about a culture. But it makes me think about how women are portrayed in this whole story. I mean, Rebekah is strong and makes her own choices, but there's also that whole patriarchal system, right?
It's definitely complicated. On the one hand, you see the men making all the decisions. But then you see women like Rebekah, who are brave and faithful and even find ways to have some influence.
Yeah, it's not a simple black and white picture.
It reminds us that these stories are more than just stories. They're about real life. And real life is complex.
Totally. And the struggle between following tradition and being an individual, that's something we still deal with today.
That's what makes these stories so relevant, even though they're thousands of years old.
Right. It's like we're discovering these ancient truths and realizing they still apply to us. And you know what else? This whole focus on the events leading up to the marriage, but not so much on the marriage itself.
Oh, yeah. That was really interesting.
It's almost like the story cares more about finding a wife than about the actual marriage.
Yeah, the video asks why that is.
Does it give any answers?
Well, it makes you wonder, right?
For sure.
Maybe it shows what was important back then. Like marriage was about carrying on the family, you know, having children, fulfilling those promises to God.
So it's like the relationship itself wasn't as important as the bigger picture.
Right. And that brings us back to the covenant, that agreement between God and Abraham. Isaac and Rebekah's marriage, it was a way to keep that covenant alive.
Wow, their marriage wasn't just about them. It was part of this huge story going back generations and affecting the future, too.
It's amazing when you think about it like that. And that's what makes these deep dives so great. We go from a simple story about two people to this huge exploration of history and faith.
It's like we're unraveling a mystery.
And learning about ourselves along the way.
It's incredible how much we've uncovered, going from this love story to this huge exploration of faith and destiny. It shows you just how much is hidden beneath the surface of these ancient stories.
Right. It's like there's always more to discover. And these stories have been around for so long because they have something to teach us, We just have to look for it.
Exactly. And, going back to what we were saying about the video focusing more on the lead up to the marriage than the marriage itself, you mentioned that maybe the relationship wasn't as important as the bigger picture. But there's that part at the end where Isaac finds comfort in Rebekah after his mother dies.
Oh, that's right. I'm glad you brought that up. It shows that even though the marriage was, kind of arranged for specific reasons, there was still real affection between them.
Yeah, it wasn't just like a business deal or something.
Right. There was a real connection. And it shows how complicated marriage can be, Sometimes it's about duty, about fulfilling expectations. But it can also be about love and support, the kind that helps you through tough times.
It makes you wonder if maybe the story is saying that love can grow even in arranged marriages.
That's a really interesting thought. And, the video ends with this question. It asks, what if we were Rebekah?
What if we were in her shoes? Yeah, that's a powerful question.
Would we have that kind of faith? Could we leave our family and everything we know, travel to a new place, marry someone we've never even met?
It makes you think about the choices we make in our lives, too.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do things because, well, it's expected of us.
Right. Family, society, tradition.
But sometimes it's something deeper, like a feeling that this is what you're supposed to do. Or maybe just taking a chance on something new and unknown.
And that's what makes this deep dive so incredible. It's more than just a story. It's a journey into the human heart. It's about faith and courage and the choices we make that define our lives.
It's been amazing, We started with what seemed like a simple love story and ended up exploring all these big ideas about faith, culture, destiny. It really makes you appreciate the depth and complexity of these ancient narratives.
It's a reminder that these stories, they have something to say to us even today. They challenge us to think differently, to question our assumptions, to learn from the past.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, we'll leave you with this. Think about how marriage has been viewed throughout history and even today. How has it changed? How has it stayed the same? And what does that tell us about how we view love and relationships? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.